Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Sweet Nothings podcast. If it's your first time here, first of all, welcome and thank you from all of the podcasts on the planet for choosing this one in particular. Don't ask me what motivated you to do so because I don't know. This, if you are new here, is your home of relaxed, funny, and informative chats all about the love of eating. We'll talk about the latest food trends, some controversial opinions, and of course, all things edible. But if you're a returning listener or viewer, first of all, hi, thanks for being here. Pleasure to have you. And can't wait to dig into another episode with you lovely folks. Today we are talking about a subject that is naturally very close to my heart, both as a creator and consumer of such things. And it's something that's just kind of been spinning in my head a little bit recently and felt like a good enough topic to approach in podcast format. But before that, as we do, let's get into the kind of food trends sweeping the internet this month. I'll be honest, in terms of both food trends and food news, we're a bit dry this month. I can't lie. It's, as I film this and record this, it is May, as you may be able to detect from the nasalness in my voice. The hay fever is hitting and it is hitting hard. The sun has appeared here in Italy with great violence, as it always does. So I do apologise in advance for any sniffing or, as I said, kind of nasal speaking. If you enjoy the podcast for ASMR vibes, this month it's ASMR with a sprinkling of allergic consequence. In terms of the food trends this month of May 2023, the main thing that's been keeping me interested, and I don't even know if this is that kind of viral or, widespread a trend, is these upside down pastry things I'm seeing both in sweet and savoury. I've seen these all over TikTok, and essentially it reminds me somewhat of the French tarte tatin idea. If you don't know what a tarte tatin is, forgive my butchering of the pronunciation, obviously. It's not a dish that we frequent very often in Scotland. The tarte tatin is a kind of upside down French tart, typically and traditionally made with fruit such as apples, for example. The apples will be cooked and caramelized with some brown sugar, sometimes with some spices and of course some butter because it's French. The pastry will be laid on top in some kind of, cast iron pan or baking tin, and then baked, and then when it's served it's kind of flipped upside down, so you have that kind of perfectly flat caramelized fruity side sticking up and the crispy pastry underneath, but both have kind of maximum caramelization and crispiness or softness depending on which part you're going for. I've seen some kind of mini baked versions of these in TikTok. Specifically, the one that caught my eye was a kind of onion based one. Essentially, someone had, either little, half moons or rings of sliced raw onion with some butter, some salt, and a sprig of thyme. And they then kind of placed that flat on a baking tray, topped with a piece of puff pastry. Whether they made it or not, I neither care nor judge because who has the time, really? And then that was kind of baked straight away before being served, flipped over as this lovely kind of caramelized onion pastry that just looks so much less fiddly and finicky than doing so the proper way up. Plus, it kind of maximizes that caramelization because the onion is cooking directly on the metal, or directly kind of on the metal with a little bit of, I don't know, foil or greaseproof paper or silpat thing in between. And I've seen similar done with apples and other kinds of things. And it's an idea that I've kind of bookmarked a few videos of because I really want to try it myself. But honestly, other than that, the main food trend that everyone is talking about and seeing virally on TikTok, and now also as a natural consequence on YouTube, thanks to various commentary YouTuber types, even those as big as Curtis Connor, for example, a Canadian YouTuber has picked up this viral trend of that I believe we spoke about on the podcast last month, essentially of American ladies, for the most part, combining packets of flavor powder and sweetener or these sugar-free, calorie-free syrups into just pints and pints of ice water in these super expensive reusable cups and calling it, their water for the day, when in fact most people recognize that it's juice. And it turns out there's various reasons that they're doing this. It's apparently something that's very common among patients in recovery after bariatric surgery, but also it's just a kind of natural result of diet culture making people scared to drink actual fruit juice. So they have to make these horrific sugar-free, syrupy, watery concoctions instead of actually allowing themselves to enjoy things the way they're supposed to taste. There's a number of reasons for it. The waste has been triggering people. The combination of flavors and the sheer sweetness of some of these concoctions has been triggering people. And of course, it's something that will probably die as quickly as it kind of became a thing, but it's been certainly the main food trend of the last, 2 months at this point nearly. Other than that, especially from a UK perspective, after all of the chaos and nonsense, if I can say so without it being considered treasonous offence, all of the kind of chaos of the coronation products and coronation recipes and coronation Colin the Caterpillar and other deeply damaging foodstuffs released for, the event of King Charles becoming King Charles, there really hasn't been much going on in terms of new products, in terms of anything particularly exciting or innovative on the UK food scene. There just hasn't really been much going on in terms of food news other than depressing food shortages or food price hikes. It really, really is a bit dry this month. So I would like to instead move swiftly on to the main thing I would like to talk to you guys about today. And that is the question of why on earth do we like watching other people eat? Why do we like it? Some people even just like listening to other people eat. That I continue to not understand, but also not judge. And by this, I don't just mean in general life. It's not very common that you'll go into a restaurant and just stand and stare at the customers enjoying their meals. It's not often that you'll stand, and look through a window at someone eating a muffin in Starbucks just for the sake of pure viewing pleasure. However, when it comes to the internet, we can't get enough of it. In its various forms, we collectively love watching other people eat and knowing what other people eat. But I kind of want to dissect a little bit of, where this has come from, what it's become, the good, the bad, and the why, most of all. And it's something that's obviously particularly interesting to me as a food content creator, and specifically as someone who has very, very gratefully and humbly received a large number of her followers, subscribers, etc. from my What I Eat in a Day videos. So it's something that really does interest me. I think for the most part, this is a subject people are interested in out of the natural human nosiness. We are curious creatures and we are curious social creatures. We love observing. We love watching what other people do. Now, this isn't just for the sake of being nosy. It often is, nowadays at least. But it's also, probably got something to do with this primal instinct of learning how to behave, learning how to act, understanding from each other how society works, how it should work, how we would like it to work, or at least how it shouldn't work. Ever since we're children, we love watching grown-ups and watching other children do things in order to understand or to learn how to or how not to do things. And I think this is a very natural phenomenon that draws us into watching what other people eat online specifically, where we can do so without looking like a creep or just super nosy. I do in real life too, but I try and at least keep it a bit more hidden. And aside from the more kind of, natural sense of nosiness, I think it's also a progression of, for example, the human interest in the entertainment format of, home makeover TV, or even more recently, reality TV in its many hundreds and thousands of formats nowadays, the good, the bad, and the downright unhinged. And also what draws us into vlogs. And by this, I mean, obviously, not everyone is interested in this kind of content. Some people, for example, find it absolutely baffling that someone would watch reality TV and enjoy it. Some people see watching another person vlogging as a real waste of time, whereas some people don't understand why someone would sit down for 2 hours to watch other people play sports on TV or in real life. We all have our own version of watching other humans doing things. Whether these humans are doing something more exciting or more impressive or just different to how we do it, we all have our own way of observing and enjoying the activity of other people in at a slightly less voyeurish way than that sounded. And in doing so, we do so with a kind of childlike curiosity, but we also do it to absorb, we do it to compare, and also, I think we do it to judge. I think many of us can't lie when we say that part of the reason we love people watching, that we love reality TV, yada, 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 is also some kind of comparison or judgment. You know, do we judge what other people eat? Yes. Do we judge what other people wear? Yes. The good amongst us keep it inside and just think it. The slightly less good among us, like to share it anonymously through social media comments, but we'll move on from that. I do think there is some positive from that, though. There is obviously a natural judgment. For example, as someone who publishes this kind of content all the time, on a daily basis, I receive just bizarre comments from people judging, complaining, attacking, whatever they want to do. An equal amount of people, for example, on the one hand think and tell me that I eat far too little and that it's shocking and that it's triggering and that I shouldn't encourage it. And on the other side of the coin, I'm also criticized, sometimes even on the same videos, for eating far too much, for having to enjoy my metabolism while it's young and fast because it'll be gone very soon. People berate me for encouraging eating too little protein, and the die-hard vegans, on the other hand, say that I'm a terrible person for encouraging or even thinking to eat meat and animal products in general. It's truly a kind of content that is always going to attract these kind of comments. You can't win. You cannot win for anything. There will always be people judging you for eating too much, too little, in the correct way, in the incorrect way. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in the world, or what you're eating, or how you're eating it, someone will always have a problem with it. That said, though, I do also very much, obviously, for the reason that I keep continuing to create this kind of content and enjoy consuming this kind of content too, there is, thankfully, a positivity to it, I think. In the sense that beyond the nosiness and beyond the judgment, which is a natural consequence, I think there is also a great resource in some of these videos. Not in all of them. Sometimes it's just people eating a whole day of packaged food and it's not particularly interesting. Or it's someone in a different part of the world, so you can't fully relate, or you can't understand, or you can't find a lot of the things that they're eating, so it isn't hugely relevant. However, if you come across, a day in the life of, or a what I eat in a day type video from someone who's a great cook, obviously there can be a lot to be learned about techniques or about ingredients. One of the things I loved doing before moving to Italy was watching, Italian food content, for example, to get ideas about what an Italian actually eats in a day, about the kind of things that are cooked here on a regular basis in different regions. But I also just like watching what chefs eat or what pastry chefs make. I love watching great home cooks cook, no matter their kind of diet either. Also, if someone is on a similar budget, for example, there are many people who like to create content that's based on just what they have in the fridge, or people who create, budget meal prep examples, or low budget recipes, £1 meals, all of this kind of stuff. You can get some fantastic tips for affordable eating and affordable cooking that you wouldn't find if you weren't seeking out this kind of content. Or, if it's not budget content you're looking for, if someone's in your area, for example, if you live in a big city, a lot of these kind of what I eat in a day videos or food reviews can be in new places that you might want to visit that you didn't know existed. They'll, find places in locations that you'd like to travel to, or just somewhere that's just down the road from you that could be this brand new place you've never tried before that could be a new favorite. And watching what other people eat, or other people sharing what they eat or what they had eaten, their thoughts on what they ate from these places, is a great way to almost try it with your eyes before actually going there and spending your money on it, you know? As a kind of inevitable extension of what would have been newspaper restaurant reviews back in the day, you now have a quick 60-second format on TikTok showing you the similar thing. In terms of the more niche element of this, though, aside from the more short form what I eat in a day videos or food reviews or vlogs, the slightly more niche area of this, I believe, can probably be attributed to the mukbang. The most, if you will, some of the most extreme kind of watching other people eat content certainly comes from this style of video. If you have heard of a mukbang but you're not really sure what it is, or if it's been a few years since you've heard of one, or if it's a completely new word to you, that's understandable. It's not an English word. It's apparently a word that combines two South Korean words for eating and broadcasting at the same time. And it's a trend and a phenomenon that started to appear just over a decade ago. Around 2010, apparently, was kind of when it began gaining popularity. And the idea was that South Korean creators or, South Korean people who were active on the internet were beginning to film themselves or to live stream themselves while eating and just having a chat. Not necessarily having a chat with another person, but just talking about their day, talking about things, talking about ideas, conversation points, or just eating on camera. And if I understand correctly, if I've been educated correctly on the matter, it was almost as a way to simulate eating with another person, even if you weren't. For example, if you were caught up in the extremely busy and time-consuming South Korean work culture, it's almost like you had someone to enjoy dinner with once you got home to your apartment, even if you lived alone. You could experience the kind of social element of eating without actually having to experience the social element of eating, or if no one else was available for that at the time. And it became hugely popular and then, of course, became global. But as unfortunately, as the internet tends to do with various things, what started as a way to kind of just chat and share recipes or share meal ideas, share cooking, share a bit of eating, it quickly became, something a bit more extreme, which says a lot about the internet in general, but definitely says a lot about us as people too. Mukbangs, maybe less so now. I feel like the big kind of viral wave has kind of passed in terms of YouTube content, at least. But, there's mukbang content out there that still caters to the original purpose, as in the social element, eating a normal meal while just chatting and making it, something a bit more entertaining. But it now also caters to ASMR enjoyers. It caters to people who enjoy specific fetish content and even shocking, extreme content. People in terms of the ASMR, some people love the sound of chewing or they love the sound of certain foods being eaten. And this is something I don't understand. It makes my skin crawl and my ears itch watching that kind of mukbang content. While I've enjoyed mukbang content, especially if the creator is someone who's interesting or if it's a kind of food I've never had before, I do enjoy watching it. But the ASMR side of things with the chewing sounds, the biting, the slurping, the crunching really isn't for me, but some people love it. And there's a huge, huge market for it on YouTube still. There's a little bit of fetish content, extending from feeder kind of vibes or people who enjoy watching tiny young women eating vast amounts of food that naturally then just became, how many times have I said naturally so far in today's episode? Too many for like the 20 minutes that I've been filming for. This naturally became something that then led into, kind of more shocking and extreme content. I think it's difficult to mention the development of the mukbang community and mukbang popularity without mentioning, for example, Nikocado Avocado, probably the most famous and traumatizing example of mukbang content creators who went a little bit too far, and have just instead been displaying examples of binge eating and almost promoting or encouraging or creating a culture of binge eating being normal or acceptable or entertaining. leading to all sorts of drama being unfolded for the sake of entertainment while eating an inordinately large amount of food, and usually incredibly heavy fast food as well. Just, it went from just being someone enjoying some noodles and having a chat about something interesting that happened to a marriage breaking down while eating enough McDonald's, you know, burgers and fries and chicken nuggets and sides and things for 5 people in one sitting. And while some people will find that entertaining for various purposes, it's something that definitely has passed its peak in terms of shock content, extreme content, and, something viral that other people are trying to mimic, because I think we've seen the damage it can do now. However, the more kind of commonly seen or commonly enjoyed, less difficult to justify what I eat in a day content is something that seems to only be picking up speed, especially with short form platforms such as TikTok and YouTube Reels, compared to the more long form 30 to 60-minute mukbang videos that became quite normal and very popular on YouTube. What I eat in a day videos are something that I've always loved to watch long before I began creating the kind of videos by myself. When I began watching YouTube for entertainment as a teenager and as a young adult, it kind of first came to my attention mostly through vegan or plant-based influencers. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. These were mostly young women who were around my age, and they were creating these meals with these ingredients that I'd never seen or heard of before. People who lived in the sunnier states of the US, cooking with fruits and vegetables I'd never seen before, making whole rainbow meals out of vegetables and plant-based ingredients that I'd never considered before. And it was somewhat inspiring, it was interesting, and it was something so different from the kind of standard Scottish diet that I am and was used to at the time, that I find it fascinating. Of course, this then continued to become a bit extreme and controversial because, some of the plant-based influencers then went on to make things a little bit extreme in terms of, turning to a fully raw diet. Some of them were eating like 20 bananas in a day or something ridiculous like that. And it became a little bit more difficult for people like me with a background in kind of disordered eating to be able to enjoy this stuff through a non-critical lens. But it's something that I feel has been quite consistent ever since it started appearing on YouTube. Unlike mukbang content, which kind of appeared, grew, became saturated, and then kind of died a death or dropped off a little bit for the average non-specific content-seeking viewer, what I eat in a day videos seem to be something that appeals across the board. Some people, for example, enjoy watching these shorter form videos because they can inspire weight loss ideas. Maybe someone who's made a great achievement in completely transforming their body, sharing the meals and ideas and ingredients that really help them become a lot healthier, or to gain muscle while working out. Some people on special diets, for example, gluten-free creators or plant-based creators or keto creators, who are sharing ideas for recipes, meals, ingredients, combinations of things that can help get through a day or just gain some insight into a specific diet that we don't think about very often. Some, for example, that I've come across a lot more often have been based around recovery content, whether it's recovery from injury, whether it's recovery from disordered eating, whether it's a kind of someone turning from veganism back to a more omnivorous way of eating and kind of sharing what it is they eat and why and how it makes them feel, or someone who's trying intuitive eating for the first time, or someone who just has a very normal bog standard diet, just sharing what they eat, and other people finding it very comforting just for the sake of having seen it and having had it shared with them. While I can't speak for everyone as to why this kind of content is so appealing, as I said, perhaps it's for the extreme, perhaps it's for the nosiness, perhaps it's for the judgment that we all like to do, whether we admit it or not, perhaps it's for feeling like we're not alone, perhaps it's for feeling like we're eating with someone else, or that someone is sharing ideas with us, or that we can relate to the lifestyle and the food choices of other people online better than we can the people in our own real life communities. I feel like there's a number of reasons why, though the more extreme and triggering and damaging forms of, watching other people eat online isn't always ideal, I feel like there are so many little niches of positivity and entertainment and comfort to be gained from this kind of content. I can't speak for everyone, as I said, but it really kind of scratches a little part of my brain. And I find it very interesting and satisfying and comforting. Whether it's someone who eats in a completely different way from me, for example, I love watching girls who are vegan and are bodybuilders at the same time. I find that fascinating because it's something, those are two things that my body, have never done and are probably incapable of doing, especially at the same time. I find that fascinating. I find people in recovery fascinating. I find people who've transformed their body fascinating. I find people who just go around eating a normal diet based on the country they live in fascinating, whether it's in Far East Asia, where I've never been, whether it's in an island community I've never been, whether it's, just in a city I've never been in before, and they're eating different kind of traditional dishes from that place or that region. Similarly, it's something that always feeds my curiosity and gives me a lot of new ideas. I love following chefs and home cooks even more so, to be honest. It's just something that, as a food lover and as someone who also loves to talk about and write about and share what I eat, as much as I love creating this stuff, I love consuming it too. And I find the whole factor and I find the whole fact of other people enjoying it, and whatever reason that may be for, equally interesting. Um, if you haven't already, because lots of lovely people do share it with me in comments or in DMs and also in emails, do let me know, if you haven't already, what it is you love about this kind of content. I don't just mean my what I eat in a day content, but what other people share too. Do you love mukbangs? Do you love what I eat in a day stuff? Do you love cooking vlogs? Do you love meal prep content? Do you love menu planning? And, even the kind of weekly shop content is something that really interests people a lot. Watching someone go to a supermarket in a different country, or watch someone do a food shop for an entire month at a certain budget. All of this kind of stuff is it's so wonderfully human and normal that, it could be something that's either really, really boring to you or deeply fascinating. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you're watching on YouTube, do let me know in the comments, or slip into the Instagram DMs. Let me know on whatever platform you like to. Send me an email if you like at maverickbaking@outlook.com. I love, love, love knowing what it is that draws you into this kind of content. Is it like what gets it for me? Is it the curiosity? Is it the comfort? Is it the almost social element of it? Or are you just nosy and you like to judge people? Because, it could be that too. But it's a topic that I find fascinating, and one that doesn't really seem to be going away. For, as I said, the extremes of the mukbang community have risen and fallen, but it seems like there is always some degree of watching people eat online that has existed the entire time that social media has, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. It's always there. Why is it there? What is it about it that we love so much specifically? I don't know. I find it fascinating. I find it comforting, and I continue to find it very interesting. But do let me know your thoughts. But aside from that, though this is a short and sweet one this month, it's just something that I felt like I wanted to kind of get off my chest a little bit, to ask you guys about, to ponder about, to wax lyrical about. It's a subject that, I find fascinating, both in the reality of it and just the concept of it in general. I find it really, really interesting. So I'd be interested to know if you do too. as you're here listening to a food-related podcast anyway, the answer is probably at least a little bit. But I'm afraid I'm going to cut it off there for today. As I said, it's been a dry-ass month in terms of food news and food trends, so there's nothing much more to contribute there. And I am just interested in knowing what you guys think about this kind of subject. But thank you so much for listening, whether this was your first time, your fifth time, or your 21st time here at the Sweet Nothings podcast. It is always appreciated. Don't forget, if you would like to be the first to hear new episodes, or if you would like to support the production, if you'd like to support Maverick Baking in general, or the Sweet Nothings podcast and everything about it in general, you can do so on Patreon. Just search for Maverick Baking or the Sweet Nothings podcast on Patreon and you will find it. Otherwise, if you're listening on Spotify or other podcast platforms, I would hugely appreciate a positive little review if you have one, or if you're listening on YouTube, tap the like, tap the subscribe. You guys know what it is by now, but it would be greatly appreciated anyway. Thank you so much as always for being here. I hope you have a fabulous start to the summer, and I'll be here to chat to you again next month. See you later.